The Mercedes SL has long stood for refined elegance and continent-crushing ability, but it was only with the introduction of the 2002 model year car that the sport part of the SL's Sport Leicht, Sport Leicht designation could justify its existence. The previous model was neither sporty nor lightweight, and although the later design still doesn't so much tip the scales as total them, Mercedes have made the effort to endow the car with some genuine dynamic prowess, something that's continued with this facelifted version announced in 2008.
One thing the Mercedes SL isn't short of is backstory. Its ancestry going back as far as 1954, and though with each passing generation the sportiness and the lightness may have diminished, the SL has fused into a beautifully engineered two-seat GT car which aims to fuse the luxury of an S-Class luxury saloon with the appeal of open-top motoring. Now, the current generation version, known to real Mercedes anoraks as the R230 series, faced strong competition in its early years, hence Mercedes' decision in 2008 to give it this slight facelift and a package of technological tweaks. Now, car buyers in the privileged position of having something north of £60,000 to spend and only 2 passengers and a little bit of luggage as practical constraints have the world's most exotic and talented vehicles laid out before them. This is a popular place for their money to end up. Let's find out why. Though more focused these days, the SL remains more of a grand touring GT than a real sports car, built more for bullet-like straight line performance than aggressive cornering. Now, having said that, this 1800 kilogram car still has the ability to excite through a series of fast bends. The entry-level SL350 has the standard suspension setup that still shows great composure, while more expensive models utilise Mercedes' clever active body control technology that's constantly adjusting the suspension for the optimum setup. All models get a high-tech direct steer system that combines with the more familiar speed-sensitive power steering to increase the steering rack ratio sharply when the steering angle gets beyond 5 degrees. Now, what that means is that extreme manoeuvres at speed require simply a flick of the wrists rather than whole armfuls of steering. The petrol engine choice boils down to V6, V8, or if you've got the stomach for it, V12. Go for the entry-level V6 SL350 and you get 315 brake horsepower. That's 50 horsepower more than was offered in the pre-facelifted version of this car. And this engine has a far more sporting demeanour now, capable of revving up to 7,200 RPM and jetting this SL to 60 in just 6 seconds. All of which makes you wonder at paying the price premium for the next model up, the SL500 with its 5.5 litre burbling V8, still producing 388 brake horsepower, but only half a second quicker to 60. Above that sits the hugely impressive SL600 with its V12 twin turbocharged engine, putting out 517 brake horsepower and capable of a supercar humbling 4.5 second sprint time from rest to 60. If that's not fast enough, you could go for the version that I'm trying here, the SL63 AMG with its V8 engine putting out 525 brake horsepower. And that sits just below the flagship SL, which is the 65 AMG model with a thumping 612 brake horsepower. Get the SL down from warp speed and the first thing that you notice is that the peanut style headlamps of the original post-2002 generation SL have been replaced by these single pod bi-xenon units. Now, what's in a headlamp? Well, quite a lot when it comes to these. They feature an intelligent lighting system that has 5 different modes that activate automatically. There's a motorway mode, for example, which activates in 2 stages at speeds of above 90 kilometers an hour. There's an intelligent lighting function that swivels the lights with the steering. And there are even cornering lights that illuminate the grass verge at speeds of under 70 kilometers an hour. The bonnet has a more aggressive angled look these days, and you've got these powerful side gills in the front wings. Now, inside, owners of the original version of this car will notice the restyled 3-spoke steering wheel, the more supportive seats, and the redesigned instrument cluster. Otherwise, the recipe's classic SL. Now, to the roof. You're going to want to have it down frequently in this car for 3 reasons. First of all, the electric mechanism is so effective and quick. Secondly, you've got this wind blocker that cocoons you from buffeting. And thirdly, you don't need this, because there's an air scarf system that is built into the head restraints. It's a heater and blower that keeps a constant stream of warm air on your neck on cold winter days like this one. The metal folding roof itself vies with the engines to be the highlight of the whole SL package, not least because it takes up less boot space than you might expect. You get 310 litres with the roof up and still 206 litres with the roof down. Now, I've got the optional electric opening trunk here, which automatically pulls the cassette out of the way so you can get easier access to your luggage. But even with a manually opening trunk, you've got a button here where you can open it and put it down in order to do the same thing. I can give you an idea where prices start at around the £65,000 mark, but as to where they finish, well, you could end up paying as much as £215,000 for this car if you go for the SL 65 AMG Black Series model. But more standard variants compete mainly with cars like BMW 6 Series and Jaguar's XK. As you'd have a right to expect for the kind of money being asked, all Mercedes SL derivatives come well equipped with Mercedes cockpit management and navigation display known as Command, which incorporates a CD/DVD player, the Linguatronic voice recognition system, satellite navigation, and a music server capable of storing up to 1,000 MP3 tracks. You also get leather upholstery, those xenon headlamps. You also get rain sensing wipers, ESP and ASR skid control. Mercedes SL owners tend not to sweat the details of running costs too much, but for what it's worth, the fuel economy of this version is a step forward from that of its predecessor. The more powerful SL 350 manages to eke 28.5 miles out of every gallon of super unleaded. That's a 1.1 mile to the gallon improvement over the old car. And even the SL 500 and SL 600 variants are more efficient. Mercedes claims a 3% improvement in fuel economy. Residual values were helped by the 2008 restyle, which was just as well because they were starting to erode slightly. And insurance, well, it's never going to be cheap for a car like this, is it? Group 20 is what you'll be looking at for most of the variants except the entry-level SL 350, which is Group 19. But the quote from your broker might be less eye-watering than the grouping may lead you to expect, because the buyer clientele for Mercedes SLs tends to be more mature and responsible than other cars of its ilk. It may have been around for over half a century, but the appeal of the Mercedes SL has scarcely diminished. Ask it to glide you around town, sweep you through your daily commute, or obliterate a transcontinental cross-country dash, and this consummate roadster will rise to the challenge in style. Such capability is never going to be inexpensive, and some may bemoan the lack of pure sporting focus. But this version of the car transcends much of this with its shining all-round ability. The best SL to date? Most would agree that it is.